Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi. Good. How are you?
Good. How are you? Very, very good.
My
Very good. No, that's okay. That's okay.
no, but it'll
Can you hear me?
there will be a
There will be a
lag.
lag.
Switch
Yeah.
off
Of
the speaker.
the speaker.
On a speaker.
On the speaker. Should I put on a headphone, you say?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Let me look for one.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
We'll start
We'll start in
minutes.
minutes. Sorry, I have to put on my. Is that okay? Can you?
Yeah, this should be much better. Because
Yeah, yeah.
audience
Just
will
one second.
otherwise hear me speaking twice.
But on the screen, I see you one way and I am like another way. So
Earlier it was
is that
I don't know how you just changed
no?
it into
No, because I have to put in the headphones, so my port is at the bottom.
Okay, so what do we do? Is this better?
Yeah, this is better. Yeah, this works
Wait,
perfectly
I
fine.
will have to figure out my tripod settings. Sorry, just one.
Does it work for you?
No, it doesn't work for me because I have a tripod. I'm just going to figure it out. Sorry. No, it doesn't work for me actually.
Achha, ek second. Oh. Okay, I'll just keep it in my hand.
Yeah,
Don't
got
worry.
it. Got
This
it.
is fine, no? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, got it.
This should be good.
One second. Sorry. Better? Sorry, we should have done
Better,
that.
perfect, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, should be fine. Okay, so nice to see you on the other end.
Me too. Very nice to see you after a long time.
I will
I think
have
first
to,
time in this lockdown.
yeah,
So
yeah,
very good to chat with you.
yeah. I will restrain myself from calling you sir.
Please do not embarrass me.
Yeah.
If
So,
you call me sir, I will call you ma'am.
okay. No, I will not
ठीक
call
है?
you sir. Yeah. So
Yeah,
just
yeah.
you don't really need an introduction, but I will introduce you to everybody else here. I am
Thank
with
you.
Mr. Anupam Bansal from ABRD Architects. I've had the privilege of being taught by him, and it's wonderful to have you here at the other end talking about stone and the use of stone in institutional spaces. I'm just going to take 2 minutes and introduce you and the studio, and then I will start with my rant and the questions.
Sure, sure.
So
Thank you.
ABRD was founded in 1996 and incorporated in 2000 by Anupam Bansal and Rajesh Dongre. They aspire to create conscious designs. Their studio follows an evolutionary approach of design where solutions emerge as a response to local contexts and natural environments while being economically viable. They believe in crafting and co-creating built environments that facilitate well-being. This SPA alumni duo has specialized in designing educational institutions, research and development facilities, workplaces, and hospitality projects. Some of the notable R&D facilities designed by ABRD architects are the NCBS TIFR Bangalore, Faculty of Life Science and Earth Sciences, South Asian University, New Delhi, and the Center for Human Genetics, Bangalore. So thank you, Mr. Bansal, for being here.
Thank you, Tanya, for a lovely introduction. Thank you very much.
I will start with a few questions. So the theme for today's conversation is the use of stone in institutional spaces. And my first question would be actually that institutional spaces typically are high traffic projects, right? So when one selects stone right? What are the things to keep in mind? Plus, what are the stones that, in your experience, work well in such?
I think before I get into institutional spaces, I think it's important to uh, kind of underline why we use stone. What is the quality of stone that is so appealing to architects? And stone has been a material which has been used for time immemorial now to create very small spaces, intimate buildings, as well as very iconic structures. So, the history of architecture is laden with all kinds of really amazing buildings made out of stone. So when I look at stone, my first impression is as if it's an indestructible material. It's something which is there to stay forever, somehow.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's a very interesting material. And the other aspect, which before I get into the institutional aspect of use of stone, I think the other aspect which is very appealing about stone is that if you look at stone, really there is no process of manufacturing, because the manufacturing is done by nature, right? The nature is what has manufactured this material, and all we need to do is to extract it. And to that end, I think to an extent, it remains a very green material, as opposed to materials which are being propagated as green or sustainable, which are being sold by companies all over the world. So there are some kind of materials which are either petrochemical based or they are plastic based. So stone remains a natural material. So which is why stone will always be a very, very interesting material and is always something very appealing to each one of us, I think, as an architect. And we will talk about how the use of stone is changing over time. But when you come to institution, I think this aspect of two or three aspects of stone, which I kind of underline. One is durability, one is long life of stone, and it's kind of almost an indestructible nature, which makes it very relevant for institutional buildings, because institutional buildings, be it a school, be it a university, be it a research campus, is a heavy footfall area. So there are so many people using the same facility, so many people going up and down the staircase, so many people touching the surfaces of a wall, so many people sitting out on a bench. So, it's not a residence where, you'll have occasional traffic, you'll have one or two people using a stone bench in a day, but here there are thousands of people, hundreds of people who use different aspects of the building. So, which is why it remains a favorite material, at least in Indian context. It will always remain a very, very favorite material for each and every one of the architects. And not only for architects, clients who really kind of want stone to be used in their buildings, like it simply because it's so maintenance free, it's so maintenance friendly, and it's easier to maintain it as opposed to any other material which requires so much more maintenance, so much more cost input, so on and so forth. So that's what really makes stone a very appealing material.
So when it comes to educational buildings, right, what are the two or three types? Could you share some examples of how you have used different stones to achieve your desired objectives, the ones that you sort of listed out right now?
So the other aspect about stone, which is so fascinating, which I didn't mention in the initial part, which we just talked about, is that at least in our country, and I'm sure this is for other parts of the world also, it changes from place to place. So it changes as you drive from Delhi to maybe Tamil Nadu, it will change every 200 kilometers. So the whole nature of, North India, you have very good sandstones, very good limestone. As you go south, you'll get metamorphic rock, metamorphic stones. As you go further, you'll get igneous and you'll get granites. And so South India is kind of typified by granites. North India is typified by sandstone. So typically speaking, we try as much as possible to use local stones, and that helps in several ways, because firstly it makes your architecture immediately rooted, because it creates the first layer of association for the building where you're siting the building, and secondly it also works, something, if you can imagine a stone, a sandstone, which has weathered the storms of North India for last 800 years, or for last millennia or few, it's very easy to use it in a building because it will continue to weather that storm within the building. So usually buildings like, for example, if I were to say the Alliance Francaise, which we did in 2001, we were, the cladding was all Dholpur stone cladding, which was very thick Dholpur stone cladding, about 80 thick. The floors were deep red Mandana stone, which is another very, very hard stone. Then the staircases and all public areas were Kota stone. Typically, I really like this range of stone, which is prevalent in North India. Very plain colored, very Spartan kind of a material, which is like Kota stone, sandstones, even the Mandana stone, which is deep maroon in color. I really enjoy using them because they give a very good character to the building, in my opinion. So that's what, I mean, the other building which I did was a building called Spectral Head Office, where again we use a combination of Gwalior stone and red sandstone on the facades. Actually, here we even tried doing a laminated fin. So what we did was that we stuck two layers of stone together by a PVB film, and almost like how you laminate glass, that's what we had used to make a fin. And then as we move south, the building that we did in Bangalore, the National Center for Biological Sciences, most of it was granite, simply because granite was abundantly available there. And, there were almost 100, 200 varieties to choose from. So which way it was easy to, kind of,
Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me?
Not really. I lost you for a bit. Yeah, now I can hear you.
You can hear me? Sorry. I think my phone-
Yeah.
Yeah. You can hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my next question would be moving on from institutional spaces to the large scale sort of offices, right, or research centers, where the traffic is very different. So therein, how would your approach to stone and its use in design change?
So I think, the choice of stone, there are two or three qualities that you kind of immediately look for. One is that you're interested to find out what is the water absorption in stone. And you'd be surprised that some stones are very absorptive to water, while others. So even some granites, which you would assume to be, that they will not absorb water, actually absorb a lot of water. And after a rainfall or after a spill of water, you would see stains on the stone. So generally, that's a big criteria in how you choose the stone, because the stone which absorbs water is more prone to carrying stains in them. For example, if there's a coffee or a tea stain, which if you have a spill, that's so in research spaces particularly, we are very, very sensitive to spillage, because there are acids, there are chemicals, there are so many different things, so many different types of fluids being used inside laboratories. So that is one big criteria that you have to kind of look after, because you don't want a lab in a few years looking like a cafeteria. Yeah. So you don't want that. So that's a very, very important criteria. One is the stain resisting property of stone. The other, I think, is just how much water it absorbs. So, for example, Sadarari stone, which is a granite, one would assume that it's a very hard stone, very light in color, very nice, beautiful stone. But it absorbs a lot of water, and it gets so much water stains all over the surface that even after a very small rainfall, you'd see that the entire color of the building starts to look very, very, in a sense, a bit unkempt. So that is a very big criteria to me, that this property of stone to absorb water, liquid is a very, so if you see, for example, the sandstones are not particularly good stones for flooring. So if you remember, when they redid the CP redevelopment,
Yeah.
they kind of laid back the sandstone in the corridors, and which was I think the idea was to conserve it to its original shape on how Lutyens and Baker had planned it at that point of time, which I can understand, but it was a big problem because in the meantime, the population, has overgone, and how many people use CP today as compared to how many would use. If you remember the old pictures of CP, there was hardly any traffic. So you can imagine how it works now. So which is why sandstones don't work very well in horizontal surfaces. Granites usually will work well in all surfaces, but you have to be careful while looking at granites also. The other thing which is a bit difficult to figure out, some granites are also, they emit a little bit of VOC or radioactive content. So it's not recommended for interior spaces sometimes, but it's a bit difficult to really determine that without any scientific means. We don't have the scientific means to really determine the emissions from stone, so we can't really determine that. But generally, out of common sense, one can see what kind of a stone to use in interior, what kind of a stone to use in interior. And just by experience, last 30 years, we've also committed several mistakes. I have to tell you that. And several times we've used a stone which didn't work well at all. So you got a dressing down from the client. Sometimes you've had to change them. Sometimes you've been penalized for them. So, you learn by learning by doing is the way to go, I guess. Yeah.
So this is very interesting said about the VOCs and stones in interiors, right? Could you specify by any chance what, like, example of what are the one or two stones that do not work for interiors?
Certain now, but when we were doing the laboratory project in Bangalore specifically, this was about maybe 6-7 years back. So the scientists had kind of specified to me that don't use this granite, this granite, this granite. They had a bit of a library out there because, having been in the field for so long, they were quite, they had the experience, and they kind of told me that don't use these particular stones. When I brought samples to them, and they said, oh, don't use these particular stones because they can emit, they are believed to emit some kind of emissions which is harmful to our experiments, because their experiments are very, very sensitive. Anything and everything can kind of jeopardize their experiment. So they really told me, they just kind of kept those samples aside. I don't remember the names now.
Okay.
But those are, yeah, like for example,
but it's insight. It's really good.
Yeah, even I mean, obviously you don't use a lot of Italian in a laboratory kind of a scenario, but when you add any epoxy or any resin to stone, it also becomes emissive. So you should avoid it in a sense, because resins and adhesives which you employ in stone processing are particularly harmful in terms of emissions, and they work especially in an air-conditioned environment where the content can hang around in the interior space. That is where they would recommend you not to really use it.
Okay. So my next question to you.
I lost you. I lost you there.
I'll just repeat myself. When it comes to spaces for private use, how can one play around with stone and use stone in combination with other materials?
Yes, okay. So I think firstly, in public spaces or in public buildings or even in landscape, I think stone art and manner, right? It's not really decorated or carved, or you don't use simply because of the cost prohibition. Maybe you will make a feature wall out of stone, or maybe you will use some stone bollards which are decorative. But generally in public spaces and public buildings, you use stone really for its longevity. And obviously you impart some aesthetic to it.
Yeah.
But the aesthetic is primarily, I wouldn't say it is primarily not so intricate in nature. It is more imparted at the level of an entire surface. You create colors or you create tonal variations. But when it comes to private spaces, I mean, there are endless possibilities with stone, because nowadays you can use laser cut, you can use water jet. Now you can use so many different techniques of polishing, so many different techniques of cutting. And you can, for example, carve out a whole jali through it, machining tools. You can make semi-carved spaces. You can make so many different things are possible that it's even difficult to enumerate them here. But in private, I think stone, and you must have seen in hotels, in so many different more luxurious kind of projects, they will be using stone to create water fountains, water features, murals, a lot of large-scale artwork. So, in private buildings of that nature, the use of stone is very varied, very different, and aided by all the different techniques which are available in the stone processing industry today. The possibility is just endless in that sense. So, I don't know how else to explain that to you. Yeah.
This is exactly what I think we were wanting to hear. So, okay, moving away from the typology, right, and stone
Right.
uses as relevant to a particular typology. The use of stone when it comes to different elements. For example, like you said, horizontal versus vertical. Certain stones are better used for horizontal surfaces or better used for vertical surfaces. When it comes to facades, right, stones obviously bring in a lot of versatility. I mean, stone is a versatile material. So could you sort of share some ideas or insights into how one can use stone, play with stone when it comes to facades and vertical surfaces?
Okay, I can only share it from my experience. And firstly, as years have gone by, stone is becoming more like a veneer. You remember during when we were all in college, probably the stone cladding used all over was almost maybe 35, 40 mm thick.
Yeah.
And now we've come down, then we came down to 30 mm thick, then we came down to 25, then we came down to 20. Now I think it's come down to about 16 mm. So while I have in my younger days also used a lot of stone cladding and pretty thin stone cladding, now I'm wary to do it. I'm becoming more scared of using it at higher elevations in the building, because you don't know how the workmanship is, and so one has to be very careful on the safety aspect of stone, because this kind of industry pressure to keep using thinner and thinner stone, which I completely oppose in a sense, because in my buildings now, wherever I'm cladding, I'm not going below 25 mm, be it a granite, be it a sandstone. I really feel it's a very, very dangerous thing to do, because when they do dry cladding and they make a cut at the bottom, the blade itself somehow knocks off the entire thickness of stone. So it's something which I'm wary to use. Now, in terms of how we have used stone over the years, I really like thickness of stone, and which is what we did in Alliance Francaise, where we used a 80 mm thick cornerstone and 50 mm thick cladded stone, all wet cladded. But times have changed. That was 2001. Cladding techniques were not so advanced. Now, after that, the buildings we've done, we've generally used about 20, 25 mm thick. And but what we do sometimes is we make interesting groove patterns on stone to create another layer of shadow, another layer of, kind of a pattern on the facade, because it purely depends on what you want to achieve. So, you can kind of make it look darker by having grooves because it'll cast a shadow, and from a distance it looks much darker. And we've also used it to kind of, in combination, we use the normal Delhi color combination of Dholpur. In the Bangalore project, for example, we had imparted it a kind of a biological analogy. So just, I don't know if you've seen the DNA sequencing pattern. So the stone cladding was derived out of that. So really it was very thin horizontal strips of 150 mm thick. So not each stone was 150 mm thick, because that would have resulted in a huge amount of steel for dry cladding. So what we did was that we used big stone, but it had a groove at every 150 mm. And, so what you saw in the elevation was as if there are strips of 150 mm. That's how we use that. So these are different ways. You have to kind of find out what kind of aesthetic you want to impart and how you want to achieve it. But it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of how you can play around with it, because simply because it's a very flexible material in my sense. You can sometimes, you can play around with the corner detail very interestingly. You can play around with the sill details. You can play around with the coping details right at the top. So there are immense possibilities of how you design each and every detail, because it really comes down to that. So the more we kind of put our minds to it and get out of this mentality of using material just as a kind of a stuck on, you have to impart some character and some life into it. So the more you feel the material, the more better it becomes, even in terms of detailing.
Right. Okay. So my last question to you would be that, okay, you also speak about conscious design, right, in your ideology as a practice. When it comes to stone as a material, are there practices that you have adopted regularly or you work with regularly in your ways of working with stone to reduce waste, to make it, to optimize the use of stone and make it even far more sustainable than what it really is?
So as a starting point, I said that as a starting point, it is that I want to use stone as much as possible from the local region, right? That is the first step towards being sustainable in the use of stone. I have, perhaps only in one hotel project probably used an Italian marble, but otherwise, I love all the stones that people don't like anymore. So for example, Kota stone, I wish I could make a Kota stone building, wrap it up in Kota stone, maybe the Black Kadapa stone, very beautiful stone. I don't know if people have seen in South India, in Bangalore, they would do an entire kitchen made out of Kota stone, of Black Kadapa. So even the sinks would be made out of Black Kadapa. The shelves would be made out of Black Kadapa. The counter will be Black Kadapa. Even the vertical support for the counter is Black Kadapa. So they were like really, and these stones will acquire such a beautiful patina over time. They will get, and they age so beautifully, just like our grandparents. They slowly and slowly age, and that doesn't mean you don't love them. You keep loving them. So it's absolutely like that, and really enjoy. Apart from that, I think one of the key issues, what makes stone a bit of a problematic material, if I may, is number one, the processing. So what kind of chemicals are being used in order to, I try and generally avoid stones which are relying on heavy chemical usage. Second is that stone becomes also unsustainable, if at all, from the point of view of transportation. So, which is why using local stone becomes important, so that you don't, you're not getting stone from South America on a ship, then transported from Kandla port to Delhi. So that becomes, by the time it reaches here, it is really, really a kind of a, really, the embodied energy in stone is so high. So those are some basics. But apart from that, the other thing which, frankly, you really wish that you can somehow control a lot more is wastage. because I have seen on sites, particularly on large campuses where there are large contractors, and they waste a lot of stone in cutting. And there is so much stone wastage that I feel a few buildings can be really just floored by simply using the wastage. No, I'm not kidding. So sometimes I have made one or two smaller, very smaller projects, a little bit of community projects. I've used cut stone, waste stone from here and there. But otherwise, in larger projects at least, the wastage of stone remains beyond the purview of and the control of the architect. We can put it in contract several times, but frankly, it just never gets implemented the way you desire to implement it. So wastage is a key thing, I think. And somehow, I don't know if ideas should emerge from the stone industry on how they can minimize wastage. Maybe they should be, and how they can use wasted stone. Perhaps buildings can be made just out of those. I don't know. I have no idea, but that is something that bothers me sometimes when I look at these sites where I have. So our South Asian University has a very big stone yard, and the heap of the stone, wasted stone, is more than the heap of the utilized stone, because obviously the utilized stone is all in floorings all over the place, but there is a huge amount of wasted stone which really bothers and pains you. But I don't know what's the way out of it. So this is something which I think people who are listening, and maybe somehow we should put together some thoughts on this. And there is enough thought being put on construction waste in general, and this is one of those very key things which we could actually. Stone can be easily reused. So like make a mosaic out of stone wastage. So that's a very easy way to do it. So these are some key things to do. Use as much as possible in landscaping. Create some interest areas out of them. Otherwise, wherever you extract stone, use it in landscaping. Sometimes you encounter stone on your sites, so try to use them in landscaping. So in larger projects, unfortunately, a lot of things go out of your architect's control, but in smaller projects, you're able to control these things on a personal level much better.
Interesting. Yeah, but it's a good thing for the industry to think about. And
absolutely.
Well, thank you very much. I think this was very, very
thank
insightful.
You.
I am going to ask you a couple of questions which our audience has put out. One is, what techniques do you prefer for stone cladding? Sorry, what stone cladding?
So nowadays, generally, everybody uses dry cladding. And for smaller buildings, we still use wet cladding at times. But generally, we are doing dry cladding. And though one would MS or mild steel with GI pins or GI clamps, So, but generally,
according to you.
What, I didn't get that. Sorry.
Up to what height is dry cladding not required?
I would say you shouldn't go over a floor, frankly speaking. So, it's a bit scary, but for a low-rise building, say about 2 to 3 floors, you can use wet cladding, but with clamps, right? Earlier on, if you remember, no way that you should even think of doing anything but a dry clad building, simply because of the safety aspect. And I think if you read the codes also specify that one should use only dry cladding.
One last question for today. How important is fading away of color in outdoor?
Question actually.
One last question for
There is
today.
only one or
How
two buildings
important
where
is
I've used
fading
a
away
deeper
of
color
in
where
outdoors?
fading would be noticeable, but I haven't gone back to check, frankly speaking. So, but otherwise, you know, Dholpur stone, for example, that the one that we clad at the Alliance Francaise was a light colored stone. So fading is not susceptible. And I can't even say if it's fading or it's the dust accumulation on top of the surface. Because, you know, in a Delhi kind of climate, you cannot, there is a lot of dust which gets accumulated on buildings, which is why actually you also prefer light colored stone. So if you remember, the older buildings done by Stein, Joseph Allen Stein, they used to use the gray or the Delhi blue stone. And it kind of remains more or less the same. It doesn't change color. So I'm just wondering, it's a very good question. Maybe somebody should check out. And the granites that we clad in Bangalore were again very light colored, so they didn't fade. Or if they faded, Bangalore doesn't have so much dust. Only the spectral building, which we did, had a deep red Agra stone cladding. And unfortunately, since Spectral got taken over by AECOM, the building got sold. So we don't even really know whether the building is standing now or not standing. So I haven't gone back for last about 8-9 years. So I don't know, but I didn't observe the last time I went if there was a perceptible difference in the color. And I'm wondering which stone, if at all, would really lose, because, you know, stone is such a homogeneous material. It's not like a ceramic tile which has a color only on the top surface. It has color through and through. So, you know, once common sense would say that material which is through and through homogeneous, how would it fade? So just some thoughts on that, but I would keep that at the back of my mind. And next time I go to a building where, even if not designed by me, but designed by somebody else, I would make a note of this. Actually, it's a very good question. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can't hear you, Tanya. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. What would your
Oh, that's a tough one for me. You know, I'm not. So I would say stone.
What would your inputs be on our
So I would
hashtag
say,
Let's Talk
you know,
Design? One single statement.
I think you could just create your dream with stones. So that's all I would say there. So just dream of stone and make anything is possible with stone. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanya.
This initiative by A-Class, which is on Let's Talk Design, for as an suggestion of gratitude and A-Class. Okay, great. Thank you so much for being a part of this initiative by A-Class, which is on Let's Talk
lovely.
Design.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's actually a very good initiative.
Celebrating 50
Yeah.
years this year.
Thank you,
on
Tanya.
behalf of you, A-Class is going to plant a tree and we'll be sending a certificate. Yes.
Sure, absolutely. I will do that. Yeah. Thank you. Have a lovely day
Thank you
and a
so
lovely
much.
weekend.
Thanks
Happy
for being
Independence
part.
Day to everyone.
We'll be putting
Yeah.
this on the A-Class social media.
Okay, bye.
Please
Thank
feel
you.
free to share it on your social media channel.